A young maid accidentally enters the penthouse of a reclusive millionaire. What was meant to be just work turns into obsession, desire, and a dive into forbidden secrets. When she says, "Take it off, it's too big," everything changes. If you love stories of love and romance, watch until the end. You won't regret it. Subscribe to our channel and tell us from which city you're listening to this beautiful story. Stay tuned. The Albright Tower rose imposingly against the grey London sky, a glass and concrete monument that defied the heavy clouds. Located in the most prestigious area of Regent Street, the building was a testament to wealth and power, a vertical oasis for the privileged amidst the urban chaos. Its 60 floors housed executives, politicians, heirs, and celebrities, all protected by an impeccable security system and the well-paid discretion of its staff. At the pinnacle of this crystal tower, isolated like a prince in his fortress, lived Roderick Albright, heir to a real estate empire that had helped redesign the London skyline over the past decades. Roderick was as admired as he was feared in high society circles. At 35, he carried the classic Albright beauty, well-defined features, piercing green eyes, and an aloof demeanor that seemed etched into his DNA. Cultured, cold and intensely private, he spoke 5 languages and collected works of art with the same precision with which he avoided lasting relationships. The triplex penthouse he occupied was a world apart, decorated with an opulent minimalism that felt more like a contemporary museum than a home. Expansive floor-to-ceiling windows offered a panoramic view of the city, transforming London into a living canvas that changed with the daylight. Roderick observed this spectacle every morning, with a cup of imported coffee in his hands and the weight of the world on his shoulders. Because Roderick Albright carried a secret, an emptiness, an absence that no fortune could fill. Exactly 5 years ago, his twin sister, Rebecca, had disappeared under circumstances no one dared mention in his presence. Officially, after inconclusive investigations, she was declared deceased, though her body was never found. Since then, the Albright heir had transformed his penthouse into a mausoleum of frozen memories, where every object seemed to preserve an instant from the time Rebecca still existed. No one else was permitted into his private quarters, except for the cleaning crew, rigorously selected and instructed never to touch certain objects, never to open certain doors, never to ask questions. And even so, the maids were constantly replaced. Roderick couldn't bear to look at the same face for too long, perhaps because every face reminded him of what he had lost. In a tiny apartment on the outskirts of the East End, 20 miles and a universe away from the Albright Tower, Brooke Sumner woke even before the sun rose. The cramped room barely accommodated the single bed and the worn wardrobe where she kept her few clothes. At 24, Brooke carried in her brown eyes the melancholy of someone who grew up without roots, who had spent her entire life being just a name on social welfare forms. An orphan since she could remember, Brooke had moved through temporary homes, foster families, and care institutions. In each place, she learned a different lesson about survival. The most important, never expect anything from anyone. And the second, become invisible to avoid problems. She knew how to clean silently, enter and leave rooms unnoticed, lower her eyes at shouts and pretend not to hear others' conversations. Skills that now secured her job with the outsourced company responsible for cleaning the Albright Tower. "Brooke, you're late." Mrs. Hilda's voice, the landlady who rented the room to her, cut through the thin door. "The bus won't wait for you, girl." "I'm coming, Mrs. Hilda." Brooke finished getting ready in a hurry, tying her long black hair into a severe bun. In the cracked mirror, she observed her own face, delicate features inherited from a mother she never knew, dark circles under her eyes from lack of sleep, tanned skin that never received compliments. She put on the light blue cleaning company uniform and swallowed a bitter coffee before heading out to face the almost 2-hour journey to the city centre. That morning, the supervisor called her even before she could put her bag in the locker room. "Sumner, today you're going to Block A." Nadine, the supervisor, was a woman of few words and many demands. "Marlene resigned yesterday. We need to cover her floors." "But I've never worked in Block A." "Mrs. Nadine," Brooke ventured, knowing that was the most luxurious block. "Where the penthouses were located. Your problem. Learn fast. And remember the rules. Don't look residents in the eye, don't make noise, don't touch anything beyond what you're cleaning." Nadine handed her a different badge with a gold stripe. This gives you temporary access to the upper floors. Don't mess up. Block A was a world apart. The corridors had Persian carpets instead of the cold tile floors of the other blocks. The smell of common cleaning products gave way to imported air fresheners. The doors were more spaced out, indicating larger apartments, and the silence, an oppressive silence, as if the very air knew it should behave better in that environment. Following the instructions, Brooke started with the corridors on the 45th floor, gradually ascending. With each floor she felt more out of place, as if she were invading forbidden territory. On the 58th floor, as she discreetly polished the metal railings of the emergency staircase, she overheard a conversation she shouldn't have. "Roderick is getting worse. Teresa." It was an elderly man's voice. "Yesterday I ran into him in the elevator. He looked like he'd seen a ghost." "Shh, Paul, walls have ears," the female voice replied. "You know we shouldn't talk about that, especially here. It's been 5 years. The police closed the case. But he's still obsessed, locked in that penthouse, refusing help. As if he's waiting for her to come back. And those portraits he commissions, all with the same face. It's unhealthy." Brooke froze, the cleaning cloth motionless in her hand. She shouldn't be hearing that. She bent down further, pretending to clean the base of the railing when the stairwell door suddenly opened. An elegantly dressed elderly couple stared at her with surprise and then exchanged meaningful glances. "Good morning," the man said, recovering quickly. "You're new here, aren't you?" "Yes, sir," Brooke replied, eyes downcast. "I'm filling in for Marlene." "Ah, yes," the woman smiled artificially. "Welcome to Albright Tower. I hope you adapt better than the others." The couple walked away, but Brooke could feel the weight of something unsaid hanging in the air. She continued her work, climbing to the 59th floor. There, the atmosphere changed completely. Only 2 doors occupied the entire floor, meaning 2 enormous apartments. Her discreet plaque on the wall read, "60th floor, restricted access." Next to the private elevator leading to the penthouse, there was an intercom. According to Nadine's instructions, she should clean up to the 59th and then await authorization to go up. The penthouse owner rarely allowed the cleaning crew in, and when he did, he sent specific instructions. While cleaning the 59th floor corridor, Brooke observed an elderly lady leaving one of the apartments. She was a woman of about 70, with impeccably styled white hair, wearing a blue silk set and leaning on an elegant dark wood cane. What caught her attention was the gaze, or rather the absence of it. The lady was blind, her eyes covered by dark glasses. "Good morning, who's there?" the elderly woman asked, turning towards Brooke with surprising precision. "Good morning, ma'am." "It's the cleaner," Brooke replied, nervous. The elderly woman approached with steady steps as if she knew every inch of that corridor. She stopped a few steps from Brooke and unexpectedly extended her hand in the air as if to touch her. "May I?" she asked with a voice that blended authority and gentleness. "I like to know who works here." Hesitantly, Brooke approached. The elderly woman's wrinkled hand lightly touched her face with the delicacy of someone reading a precious text. A strange shiver ran down Brooke's spine as the fingers traced the contour of her cheekbones, her nose, her chin. For an instant, the elderly woman's expression changed, a mixture of shock and recognition that soon gave way to a mask of serenity. "What's your name, dear?" "Brooke Sumner, ma'am." The elderly woman withdrew her hand as if she had been burned, but maintained a polite smile on her lips. "I'm Cecilia Albright. I was the governess for the family who lives in the penthouse for over 40 years. She paused significantly. "It's curious." "What's curious, ma'am?" Brooke couldn't resist asking. Cecilia smiled, an enigmatic smile that didn't reach her invisible eyes. "You have her scent," the elderly woman whispered. "But now you have another name." Before Brooke could process those strange words, the intercom next to the elevator emitted a sharp sound. The cold, masculine voice that came from the device made her jump. "The cleaning crew may come up. Only one person. Follow protocol." Cecilia Albright held Brooke's arm with surprising strength before she could move. "Be careful up there, girl," she whispered urgently. "Not all doors should be opened. Not all secrets should be revealed." And then, as suddenly as she had approached her, the elderly woman released her arm and walked away towards the social elevator, leaving Brooke paralyzed, her heart racing, and an inexplicable feeling that she had just crossed an invisible threshold into unknown and dangerous territory. Brooke watched the private elevator with apprehension. Cecilia Albright's enigmatic words echoed in her mind as she gathered her cleaning supplies. The protocol mentioned by the voice on the intercom was detailed in a laminated folder Nadine had given her before ascending. Instructions for triplex penthouse access. Owner Roderick Albright. The rules were meticulously specific, almost obsessive. Clean only the rooms indicated on the attached map. Do not touch any personal objects. Do not open drawers or cabinets. Use only the products provided by the owner. Do not make noise. Do not interact with the resident should he be present. And most importantly, never enter the East Corridor, marked in red on the map, under any circumstances. The elevator opened silently, revealing an interior clad in mirrors and noble wood. Brooke entered with hesitation, inserting the special magnetic card into the control panel. The doors closed, and she felt her stomach drop as the elevator swiftly ascended to the top floor. When the doors opened again, Brooke held her breath. The penthouse entrance hall was stunning. Italian marble flooring, light grey walls, a modern crystal sculpture in the center. Everything immaculately clean and organized, as if no one truly lived there. Following the map, she started with the office. A spacious room with floor-to-ceiling bookshelves, an Italian design desk, and a panoramic city view that would make any executive sigh. The cleaning products were exactly where the instructions indicated, in a built-in cabinet, with imported bottles labeled in French. As she delicately wiped the dark wood desk, Brooke couldn't help but notice the details. A Mont Blanc pen perfectly aligned with the leather notepad, a state-of-the-art laptop closed precisely in the center. A silver photo frame turned face down, as if its owner couldn't bear to look at the image it contained. Moved by a curiosity she knew was dangerous, Brooke gently lifted the photo frame. It was a photograph of two children, a boy and a girl, probably twins about 10 years old. Both had the same intense green eyes, the same reserved smile. In the background, an imposing country house and a couple she presumed were their parents. A perfect family, frozen in time. What do you think you're doing? The grave voice, sharp as a razor, made Brooke almost drop the photo frame. She spun around abruptly, feeling the blood drain from her face. In the office doorway stood a tall man, wearing an impeccably ironed white dress shirt and dark trousers. His green eyes, the same as in the photograph, now cold as ice, pierced her with a disturbing intensity. I'm sorry, sir," Brooke stammered, replacing the photo frame exactly as it was. "I shouldn't have touched your personal items." Roderick Albright watched her as if seeing a ghost. His pale face, though beautifully sculpted, showed a mixture of shock, anger, and something more. Something Brooke couldn't define. "Who are you?" he asked, without moving from the doorway. "Where is Marlene?" "Marlene resigned, sir." "My name is Brooke Sumner." She kept her eyes down as she had learned. "I apologize for the inconvenience." A heavy silence settled between them. Brooke could feel his eyes studying her, as if trying to decipher a complex enigma. Finally, Roderick spoke, his voice now controlled, almost artificial. "Continue your work, Miss Sumner. Just follow the instructions to the letter." He turned to leave, but stopped suddenly. Without looking back, he added, "Marlene didn't resign. I dismissed her." With those enigmatic words, Roderick left the office, his footsteps echoing on the marble floor. Brooke remained motionless for a few seconds, her heart beating erratically. There was something in the way he had looked at her, something that awakened a strange and indefinable sensation in her, as if she had seen those eyes before in another place, at another time. Shaking her head to dispel such absurd thoughts, Brooke continued her work. She moved to the main living room, a monumental space with a double ceiling height and large windows that framed the city like a living work of art. The decor was minimalist and elegant, Italian leather sofas, Persian rugs over light wood flooring, contemporary artworks on the walls, everything in neutral, almost aseptic tones. What caught her attention, however, was the absence of personal elements. There were no photographs in sight, no objects that indicated memories or affections. It was as if the owner of that place existed only in the present, without a past, without a history. As she carefully cleaned an abstract sculpture on the coffee table, Brooke heard the distant sound of a piano melody. Someone was playing somewhere in the apartment, sad and melancholic notes that seemed to tell a story of loss and longing. Following the map, she continued to the dining room, equally imposing, with a table for 12 that seemed never to have been used. The gourmet kitchen, all stainless steel and marble, was so immaculate that she doubted anyone actually cooked there. As she passed through the corridor leading to the authorized bedrooms, Brooke noticed a slightly ajar door that wasn't marked on the map. Curiosity again got the better of her. She peeked discreetly and saw an elegantly decorated guest room in shades of blue and grey. In the center of the opposite wall, a large painting dominated the room, a disturbing expressionist painting of a woman with her face contorted in a silent scream, surrounded by dark shadows that seemed to swallow her. The image sent an instant shiver down Brooke's spine. There was something in that painting that deeply affected her, as if she recognized the anguish portrayed. Without thinking, she entered the room and approached the painting, mesmerized by the emotional intensity emanating from it. Despair, Roderick's voice behind her almost made her scream. By the London-based artist Gabriel Davies. Do you like art, Miss Sumner? Brooke turned quickly, mortified to have been caught once again breaking the rules. But to her surprise, Roderick didn't seem angry. On the contrary, there was genuine interest in his gaze, a curiosity that softened his harsh features. I don't know much about art, sir, she replied sincerely. But this painting, it feels like it's trying to say something. A slight smile curved Roderick's lips, transforming his face in a way that made him even more attractive. Interesting observation, he approached, stopping beside her in front of the painting. Most people shy away from this painting. They say it's too disturbing. Brooke felt a subtle scent emanating from him, an expensive, masculine fragrance, with notes of sandalwood and something wilder, untamed. It is disturbing, yes, she agreed, but it's as if... I've seen that face before. The words escaped before she could stop them, and Brooke immediately regretted it. Roderick's eyes narrowed, and the brief moment of ease evaporated like dew in the sun. You shouldn't be in this room, he said, the coldness returning to his voice. Please return to your work. Mortified, Brooke mumbled an apology and quickly left, feeling the weight of his gaze on her back. The rest of the cleaning proceeded without incident, with Brooke strictly following the map and avoiding any deviation. The piano music had ceased, and an oppressive silence dominated the apartment. When she finished, she put away the products and headed for the elevator, relieved to finally leave that place that made her feel so uncomfortable and at the same time strangely familiar. Miss Sumner. Brooke froze with her hand inches from the elevator button. Roderick stood in the middle of the hall, watching her with an indecipherable expression. Yes, sir. Your work schedule, he spoke slowly. Starting tomorrow you will only work at night. Night? She repeated, confused. But the company only has day shifts for apartment cleaning. I've already arranged it with your superiors. The tone allowed no questions. You will come at 8 p.m. and leave at 11 p.m. Just you, no one else from the team. Brooke felt a chill. Working alone at night in that immense, strange penthouse with that intimidating man. All her self-preservation instincts screamed alarms. May I ask, why? A dangerous glint passed through Roderick's green eyes. Because I prefer it that way, he replied dryly. Any objection? Brooke knew she had no choice. She desperately needed that job, and Supervisor Nadine had already made it clear that attending to Block A residents was an absolute priority. Besides, something within her, a curiosity she couldn't explain, wanted to return to that place, as if there was a mystery to unravel. No, sir. No objection. Roderick nodded briefly. Good, tomorrow 8 p.m. He turned to leave but stopped and added, One last thing, Miss Sumner. Use this. He extended a small glass bottle. It was perfume, judging by the sophisticated packaging with golden French lettering. Is it for me? She asked, confused. The cleaning products you use have too strong a smell, he explained with disdain. This perfume will neutralize the odor. Use it before you come. Embarrassed, Brooke accepted the bottle, avoiding touching Roderick's long, elegant fingers. Even so, when her fingers lightly brushed his during the transfer, an electric current seemed to run up her arm. From the way Roderick quickly withdrew his hand, he had felt the same. Thank you, Mr. Albright, she murmured, putting the bottle in her pocket. The elevator doors opened, and Brooke quickly stepped in, eager to escape that charged atmosphere. As the doors began to close, she had the impression that Roderick whispered something, words she couldn't distinguish, but which sounded strangely like, "You're back." Throughout the journey to the ground floor, Brooke tried to calm her racing heart. There was something about that man that deeply disturbed her. Something in his eyes that seemed to recognize her, as if he knew exactly who she was, when even Brooke wasn't sure herself. Leaving the Albright Tower, she stopped on the pavement and took the perfume bottle from her pocket. It was luxurious packaging, with an amber liquid inside. Hesitantly, she sprayed a small amount on her wrist and brought it to her nose. The aroma was delicate, sophisticated, with notes of jasmine and sandalwood. A very expensive perfume, which certainly cost more than her month's salary. On the golden label, in elegant lettering, was written "Memoir," and underneath, in smaller letters, "For Rebecca, always." Rebecca. The name hit Brooke like a punch to the stomach. Who was Rebecca, and why had Roderick Albright given her a perfume that clearly belonged to this woman? That night in her small room on the outskirts, Brooke dreamed of endless corridors, locked doors, and a painting of a woman screaming in silence. In the dream, the face of the woman in the painting was her own face, and behind her, a masculine shadow whispered her name. Not Brooke, but another name she couldn't distinguish upon waking, sweaty and trembling, in the darkness of dawn. The news of the new work schedule was met by Nadine with a mixture of surprise and suspicion. The supervisor looked Brooke up and down, as if searching for an explanation for Roderick Albright's unusual request. "Mr. Albright rarely makes special requests," Nadine commented, typing the changes into the system. "And never in 5 years has he asked for night service." "Perhaps he wants more privacy," Brooke suggested, uncomfortable under the scrutiny. "Privacy?" Nadine let out a dry laugh. "That man lives like a monk in a monastery. More privacy than that only in the Sahara Desert." She stopped typing and looked Brooke directly in the eyes. "Look, girl, I'll give you a piece of advice. Do your job and go home. Don't get involved." Her tone carried a genuine warning. Marlene wasn't the first to suddenly leave that position. "And apparently you won't be the last." Nadine's words stayed with Brooke all day, as she performed her regular duties on the lower floors of the Albright Tower. As the day progressed, a growing anxiety took hold of her. By 7:30 p.m., she was already in the locker room, changing from her day uniform to her night uniform, identical, except for the gold stripe on her badge indicating special access. Before leaving, she discreetly sprayed the perfume Roderick had given her on her wrists and neck. The elegant aroma seemed out of place on her skin, as if it belonged to someone else. The other, Rebecca. "Wow, what's that smell?" asked Jessica, a colleague who shared a locker with her. "Doesn't sound like something we could afford." "It was a gift," Brooke replied vaguely. "An expensive gift." Jessica sniffed the air with exaggerated admiration. "Are you sure you're not getting into something you shouldn't, little Brooke?" The insinuation was clear and Brooke felt her face flush. "It's nothing like that. It's just an incentive for me to wear another perfume during work." I know," Jessica smiled maliciously. "That's what they all say at first. I've seen this movie before, you know. Poor girl, rich boss. It's not like that," Brooke protested, louder than she intended. "Relax, I'm just kidding." Jessica raised her hands in surrender. "But be careful. These rich guys, they play with us as if we were dolls. And when it breaks, they throw it away and buy another." With these words of warning, Jessica left, leaving Brooke alone with her tumultuous thoughts. There was nothing between her and Roderick Albright, certainly. It was absurd even to consider such an idea. He was a billionaire heir, a powerful and intimidating man. She was a cleaner, a nobody without a surname or history. Still, there was something in the way he had looked at her, a recognition, a disturbing familiarity that made no sense at all. At precisely 8 p.m., Brooke stepped out of the private elevator onto the penthouse floor. Unlike the previous morning, the apartment was partially in shadow. Only a few indirect lights illuminated the environment, creating an intimate and almost ethereal atmosphere. The city below twinkled like a carpet of stars scattered across the horizon. "Miss Sumner, punctual." Roderick's voice came from a partially dark corner of the room. He was sitting in a leather armchair, a glass of whiskey in his hand, observing the view. He was wearing more casual clothes now, dark trousers and a navy blue cotton shirt with the sleeves rolled up, revealing strong, well-defined forearms. "Good evening." "Mr. Albright," Brooke replied, trying to keep her voice steady. The products and instructions are in the same place, he indicated with a vague gesture. But today I want you to start with the library. The library was not on the previous map. Roderick must have noticed her hesitation, for he added, "Third door on the right in the east corridor." And then, with a challenging glint in his eyes, "Yes, the corridor that was off limits. And now it's not." Brooke nodded silently, trying to ignore the shiver that ran down her spine. There was something predatory in the way he watched her, like a hawk assessing its prey. But there was also something else. A well-hidden vulnerability, a silent desperation that she intuited more than saw. The library proved to be an impressive room, entirely lined with dark wood bookshelves that stretched from floor to ceiling. Thousands of volumes, organized by themes and authors, created a mosaic of colors and textures on the walls. An Art Deco chandelier cast a golden light on comfortable leather armchairs and antique tables. The smell of old paper and leather mingled with the aroma of polished wood, creating a welcoming atmosphere. As she cleaned the lower shelves with a feather duster, Brooke couldn't help but notice the eclectic collection: classics of world literature in rare editions, philosophy treatises, volumes of art history, books on architecture and urbanism, and an impressive psychology section. Roderick Albright was, without a doubt, a cultured man with diverse interests. On a higher shelf, a book caught her attention, an old volume with a red leather binding and golden letters on the spine. Blood Ties, Studies on Identical Twins. Intrigued, Brooke stood on tiptoes trying to reach it. Interested in genetics? Roderick's voice, so close to her ear, made her jump. He was right behind her, so close she could feel the warmth of his body. Without waiting for a response, he reached for the book for her, his arm lightly brushing hers in the process. "It's a fascinating study on the psychic connection between twins," he explained, leafing through the volume. "Did you know that many identical twins report feeling each other's physical pain, even when miles apart?" "I didn't know," Brooke murmured, uncomfortable with the proximity. Roderick continued to leaf through the book, his elegant fingers caressing the pages as if they were something precious. Some documented cases show twins who, even separated at birth and raised in completely different environments, develop identical tastes, marry people with similar names, even give their children the same names. He closed the book abruptly, as if DNA is more than chemistry, as if it's destiny. There was an almost feverish intensity in his eyes now. Brooke took a step back, bumping into one of the bookshelves. "I should continue cleaning, sir." Roderick seemed to awaken from a trance. He replaced the book on the shelf and nodded. "Of course. I don't want to disturb you." He walked towards the door but stopped before leaving. "So you're wearing the perfume?" It wasn't a question, and Brooke felt her cheeks burn. "Yes, as you asked." An enigmatic smile curved Roderick's lips. "It suits you well." Different but well. With those words he left, leaving Brooke with a disturbing feeling that there was more to that comment than a simple compliment. Finished with the library, she moved on to the other authorized rooms. As she walked down the main corridor, she noticed a slightly ajar door that wasn't on the original map. Inside she saw a gleaming black grand piano, illuminated only by a single lamp. So that was where the music she had heard the day before came from. Without much thought, she entered the room. The room was circular, with a glass dome ceiling that revealed the starry sky. Besides the piano, there was only an armchair and a small side table with a half-empty whiskey bottle and a glass. On the walls, black and white photographs, urban landscapes of London at different times, some showing the Albright Tower itself under construction. Brooke approached the piano, fascinated. She had never played such an instrument, so majestic and imposing. Hesitantly, she pressed a key, producing a clear, vibrant note that echoed through the room. "Do you play?" Roderick stood in the doorway, watching her with curiosity instead of irritation as she expected. "No, sir," she replied quickly, stepping away from the instrument. "I apologize for the intrusion." "Don't apologize." He entered the room and sat on the piano bench. "My sister played. She was talented." It was the first time he had directly mentioned his sister. Brooke remained motionless, fearing that any movement might break that rare moment of openness. "What happened to her?" she asked softly. Roderick's fingers slid across the keys, producing a melancholic melody that seemed to carry the full weight of his pain. "She disappeared 5 years ago." His voice was controlled, but Brooke could feel the storm of emotions behind the words. The investigations were inconclusive. Eventually, she was declared permanently absent. Brooke noticed how he avoided using the word dead, as if admitting it aloud would make everything more definitive, more real. "I'm sorry," she said sincerely. Roderick stopped playing abruptly and looked at her, with intensity. "You resemble her." The comment caught her off guard. So that was why he looked at her that way. That was why he hired her for the night shift, gave her Rebecca's perfume. I don't know what to say. "It's not an obvious resemblance," he continued, studying her face as if it were a work of art. "It's something in the eyes, in the way you move, in the way you tilt your head when you're thinking." A heavy silence fell between them. Brooke felt suddenly exposed, as if he could see through her, perceive something she herself didn't even know. "It must be a coincidence," she murmured finally. Roderick smiled, a sad, enigmatic smile. "Do you believe in coincidences, Brooke?" The way he pronounced her name, almost like a caress, made her shiver. "I believe I should finish my work, sir." He nodded slowly, returning to play the piano. The melody was different now, still sad but with notes of hope intertwined. "Go finish your work," he said without looking at her. "Tomorrow I want you to clean Rebecca's room." Brooke quickly left the music room, her heart racing. Nadine and Jessica's words echoed in her mind, mingling with Cecilia Albright's enigmatic insinuations. Something strange was happening in that penthouse, something related to Roderick's disappeared sister, and in some way she didn't understand. She was at the center of this mystery. At the end of her shift, Brooke found a package on the hall table. It was an elegant box with a discreet ribbon. "A gift," Roderick said, who had silently appeared behind her. "Please wear it tomorrow." Without waiting for a reply, he retreated to his quarters. Brooke opened the box when she was already in the elevator. Inside, there was a simple black dress, but obviously very expensive, from a renowned French brand. Along with it, a handwritten card in elegant calligraphy. "To replace the uniform. R." The familiarity, the presumption of the gesture made her uncomfortable. However, upon arriving home and trying on the dress in front of the cracked mirror, Brooke couldn't help but notice how perfectly it fit her, as if it had been tailor-made for her body. That night, lying in her narrow bed, Brooke couldn't sleep. Something in the story of Roderick and Rebecca Albright bothered her, like a missing piece in a puzzle. Why had he chosen her? Why did he treat her as if he knew her? And why, despite all the warnings, did she feel so inexorably drawn to that man and his secrets? The next morning, Brooke decided she needed to know more. Taking advantage of her regular shift on the lower floors, she looked for Cecilia Albright. She found the blind elderly woman sitting on a bench in the building's internal garden, enjoying the morning sun. "Mrs. Albright?" Brooke called, approaching cautiously. The elderly woman turned her head in her direction, a smile of recognition appearing on her lips. "Brooke Sumner. I recognize your voice. And your perfume." She indicated the empty space beside her. "Sit down, my dear. I imagined you would come looking for me." Brooke sat down, observing the natural elegance of the former governess. Even in old age and with her visual impairment, Cecilia maintained an impressive dignity and presence. "You said something strange yesterday, about me having her scent." Cecilia remained silent for a moment, her face turned towards the sun. "I gradually lost my sight over the years," she explained finally. "When the eyes fail, the other senses sharpen, especially smell. I can identify people by the natural scent of their skin, even under perfumes and soaps. And I smell like her, like Rebecca Albright?" An enigmatic smile appeared on Cecilia's lips. "Not exactly like her, but there's something familiar, something only someone who lived with the family for decades would recognize." Brooke leaned closer, lowering her voice. "Mr. Albright says I resemble his sister. He gave me a perfume that was hers. And now a dress." Cecilia suddenly tensed, her wrinkled fingers tightening on her cane. "He's doing it again," she murmured, more to herself than to Brooke. "Doing what?" The elderly woman held Brooke's hand with surprising strength. "Listen carefully, girl. Roderick hasn't been well since Rebecca's disappearance. They were very close. Too close." The tone hinted at something that made Brooke shiver. "What do you mean?" "Identical twins often develop a bond that goes beyond the normal. In their case, that bond became everything." Cecilia paused as if carefully choosing her words. Rebecca was emotionally fragile, dependent, and Roderick's protective, possessive. When she started seeking independence, he didn't take it well. "Are you suggesting he had something to do with her disappearance?" Cecilia abruptly released Brooke's hand. "Don't put words in my mouth, girl. I'm just saying their relationship was complicated." She adjusted herself on the bench, regaining her composure. "What worries me is that you're not the first." "The first?" "The first young woman he hires because she resembles Rebecca." Cecilia's voice was now filled with genuine concern. "There were others before you. Marlene was the last. And before her, Caroline. And before Caroline, Deborah, all with some resemblance to Rebecca. All received gifts, perfumes, clothes. All suddenly disappeared." A cold shiver ran down Brooke's spine. "What happened to them?" "No one knows for sure. Resignations, transfers, some say they received money to start over elsewhere." Cecilia adjusted her dark glasses. "No one disappears like Rebecca, if that's what you're thinking. But there are patterns, Brooke, and you're in the center of one." Before Brooke could ask more questions, a man approached. He was tall and strong, with striking indigenous features and a silent presence that exuded contained strength. He wore the building's security uniform. "Arthur," Cecilia greeted, recognizing him by the sound of his footsteps. "Did you come to take me up?" The man nodded, then seemed to remember she couldn't see him. "Yes, ma'am." His voice was surprisingly soft for someone of his stature. Cecilia stood up, leaning on her cane and on Arthur's offered arm. "Think about what I said, Brooke," she advised. "Some doors once opened cannot be closed again." As the elderly woman walked away, guided by the silent security guard, Brooke noticed something strange. Arthur was staring at her intently, with an expression that mingled surprise and something close to fear. When their eyes met, he quickly looked away and quickened his pace, as if wanting to distance himself from her. Later, during her regular shift, Brooke found a folded piece of paper in her uniform pocket. She didn't remember putting it there. She opened it discreetly, hiding in a service room. It was a charcoal drawing, done with quick but precise strokes. It showed two women, one lying in a bed, apparently asleep, and another standing beside her, looking at her. The two were identical, and the sleeping woman wore a black dress, exactly like the one Roderick had given her. In the bottom corner, a signature A, and below, a single word that made her blood run cold: caution. The black dress lay stretched out on Brooke's bed like a silent question. It was past midnight, and she still hadn't decided what to do. Cecilia's words, Arthur's mysterious drawing, and the growing feeling that she had fallen into some kind of trap battled against an inexplicable attraction she felt for Roderick Albright and his enigmas. Mrs. Hilda knocked on the door, interrupting her thoughts. "Girl, there's a car waiting for you downstairs," the landlady announced, visibly impressed. "One of those black ones with a chauffeur in a suit and everything." "Car? What time is it?" "Almost midnight. The man said Mr. Albright sent for you." Mrs. Hilda looked at the dress on the bed. "What's going on, Brooke? What have you gotten yourself into?" The question went unanswered. Brooke felt her heart pound. She hadn't arranged anything with Roderick about working at that hour, much less about a car picking her up. But at the same time, an irresistible curiosity propelled her. "It's a special job," she replied vaguely, picking up the dress. "I'll be back in the morning." Mrs. Hilda crossed her arms, suspicious. "Girl, I don't know what kind of special job this is, but be careful. I've known this world long enough to know there's no such thing as a free lunch. It's just extra service." "Cleaning for an event," Brooke lied, quickly putting on the black dress. Perfectly tailored, the fabric flowed over her body like dark water. When she went downstairs, a middle-aged man in a chauffeur's uniform waited patiently beside a gleaming black Audi. He opened the back door without saying anything, his face a professional mask of indifference. The car's interior was luxurious, soft leather, polished wood, the discreet aroma of an expensive air freshener. On the seat, a sealed envelope with her name. "Miss Sumner, please forgive the late summons. Urgent matters have arisen, and I require your assistance at the penthouse. The driver has instructions to bring you directly. I await. R. Albright." The note, written on thick embossed paper, was formal and impersonal. Nothing indicated any intention beyond work. Still, Brooke felt as if she were being drawn into a carefully woven web. The Albright Tower at night was even more intimidating. Most floors were dark. Only a few illuminated windows dotted the facade like distant stars. The main lobby was almost deserted, except for a sleepy security guard who merely nodded to the driver and allowed Brooke to go directly to the private elevator. When the doors opened on the penthouse floor, Brooke was greeted by an atmosphere completely different from the usual. The apartment was transformed. Scented candles illuminated the entrance hall, soft classical music filled the air, and the aroma of freshly prepared food came from the direction of the kitchen. Roderick emerged from the side corridor, wearing dark dress trousers and a white shirt, with sleeves rolled up to his elbows. He stopped abruptly upon seeing her, his eyes scanning the black dress with an intensity that made her blush. "Miss Sumner," he greeted, his voice softer than usual. "Thank you for coming, despite the hour." "You mentioned an urgency," Brooke replied, feeling terribly out of place in that almost romantic setting. A slight smile curved Roderick's lips. "Yes, an urgency for company." He gestured towards the dining room. "I've prepared dinner and I hate eating alone." Brooke remained motionless, confused. "You called me for dinner?" "For dinner and then work," Roderick clarified, indicating the way. "Rebecca's room needs special attention. I thought we could combine business with pleasure." The situation was so surreal that Brooke almost laughed. A reclusive billionaire preparing dinner for his cleaner at midnight, only to then ask her to clean his disappeared sister's room. "With all due respect, Mr. Albright, this doesn't seem appropriate." Roderick's smile vanished, replaced by a closed expression. "What exactly are you implying, Miss Sumner?" "I'm not implying anything." Brooke took a deep breath, gathering courage. "I'm clearly stating that I don't feel comfortable dining with my employer at midnight, wearing clothes he gave me, with no one else present." A tense silence settled between them. Brooke expected to be dismissed, perhaps even fired. Instead, Roderick tilted his head slightly, as if evaluating her in a new light. "You're right," he conceded, surprising her. "It was inappropriate of me. I didn't consider how the situation might appear. I accept your apologies." "My apologies," Brooke repeated, confused. "Yes, you just apologized for not being able to dine with me due to the inappropriate hour and uncomfortable situation, didn't you?" There was a slight playful glint in his eyes now. "And I accepted your apologies." Brooke couldn't help a small smile. The man was arrogant, but in an almost captivating way. "In that case, may we proceed to work?" she suggested, trying to regain control of the situation. Roderick nodded, his face returning to its usual seriousness. "Rebecca's room is at the end of the east corridor." He began to walk, indicating for her to follow. "No one has been in there for 5 years, except me. It's exactly as she left it." As they walked down the long corridor, Brooke noticed how the atmosphere subtly changed. The minimalist and modern decor gave way to more classic and personal elements. Framed photographs on the walls, small decorative objects, warmer colors. "Rebecca always preferred the east side of the penthouse," Roderick commented, his voice filled with nostalgia. "She said she liked to watch the sun rise every morning." They stopped before a dark wood double door, carved with delicate floral motifs. Roderick took a key from his pocket and hesitated for a moment, his hand hovering over the lock. "Before we go in, I need to clarify something," he said, his back to Brooke. "My sister suffered from episodes, crises. You'll find strange things in there. Notes, drawings, conspiracy theories. It was part of her condition." "What kind of condition?" Brooke asked softly. Roderick turned to face her, his green eyes darkened by pain. "Doctors never reached a definitive diagnosis. Personality disorder, psychosis, paranoid schizophrenia. Each specialist had a different theory." He ran a hand through his hair in a gesture of frustration. "In the last year before she left, she worsened significantly. She became obsessed with the idea that she was being watched, pursued, that I was involved in something dark." "And you weren't?" The question escaped before Brooke could stop it. Roderick stared at her intently. "What do you think?" he asked, taking a step towards her. "I don't know you well enough to judge," Brooke replied honestly. A sad smile appeared on Roderick's lips. "Sensible." He turned back to the door and finally inserted the key. "Let's go." Rebecca Albright's room was large and elegant, decorated in shades of blue and silver. A king-size four-poster bed occupied the center, covered by a navy blue silk bedspread. Large windows took up the entire east wall, now covered by heavy curtains. An antique dressing table with an oval mirror, a reading sofa by the window, bookshelves with books and personal objects. At first glance, it looked like the perfectly normal room of a rich and sophisticated woman. But then Brooke began to notice the unsettling details. The walls, painted a soft blue, were partially covered with newspaper clippings, photographs, diagrams, and notes, all connected by red threads like an immense conspiracy map. Words and phrases had been written directly on the wall in different colors and handwritings, some almost illegible, others meticulously drawn. "My God," Brooke murmured, approaching one of the walls. The clippings dealt with various seemingly disconnected subjects: news about the Albright real estate empire, reports about a fire in a psychiatric clinic 8 years ago, scientific articles on genetics and fetal development, photographs of the Albright Tower itself under construction. In the center of this chaotic web, an enlarged photo of Roderick, in which his eyes had been crossed out with a red pen. Around it, repeatedly written, "You knew, you always knew." As I said, she wasn't well. Roderick's voice sounded close to her ear, making her jump. Brooke turned to face him, a shiver running down her spine. What did she think you knew? Roderick shrugged, but there was tension in his gesture. Baseless conspiracy theories. Delusional accusations. He walked to the window and opened the curtains, revealing the illuminated city below. Rebecca believed that our parents didn't die in the plane crash as reported, that they had been eliminated for discovering something about the experiment, as she called it. What experiment? See for yourself. Roderick pointed to another section of the wall where photos of babies, medical documents, and scientific articles mingled. Brooke approached, trying to make sense of the chaos. There was a report on advances in vitro, fertilization and stem cell research at the Albright Clinic, accompanied by a photo of an older couple, presumably Roderick and Rebecca's parents, alongside doctors in white coats. "Our father was obsessed with genetics," Roderick explained, observing Brooke's reaction. "Besides the real estate empire, he funded medical research, mainly related to fertility. The Albright Clinic was his passion, his scientific legacy. And Rebecca thought there was something wrong with that research." Roderick laughed, a humorless sound. "Rebecca thought we were guinea pigs, that our birth wasn't conventional, that we were part of some kind of genetic experiment." He shook his head. "Delusions, obviously." Brooke continued examining the wall, increasingly disturbed. Among the chaotic notes, she found a phrase that was repeated in several places. She wasn't the only one. There was another. Who was the other? Brooke asked, pointing to the phrase. A shadow passed over Roderick's face. "As I said, delusions." He moved away from the wall, clearly uncomfortable. Rebecca developed the fantasy that she had a triplet sister, that there were 3 of us, not 2, that the third was separated at birth, taken away, hidden. Brooke felt a chill run down her spine. And there wasn't this third sister. "Of course not," Roderick replied quickly, perhaps too quickly. "Our parents would have told us. There was no way to hide something like that." Brooke continued to walk around the room, absorbing the details. The dressing table was covered with expensive cosmetics, some still open, as if Rebecca had only left for a moment. There was a black pearl necklace carefully arranged, a poetry book with a bookmark on page 42, a hairbrush with black strands still caught in the bristles. On the bedside table, a framed photograph caught her attention. It showed teenage Roderick and Rebecca embracing in front of an imposing mansion. The resemblance between them was striking. The same intense green eyes, the same restrained smile, as if they shared a secret no one else knew. "You really do look like her," Roderick commented, watching her study the photograph. "It's not an exact physical resemblance. It's more the essence. Is that why you hired me? Because I look like your sister?" Roderick didn't answer immediately. He approached Brooke, stopping so close that she could feel the warmth emanating from his body. Gently, he took the photograph from her hands and placed it back on the table. "I hired you because I needed someone to clean my home," he said finally, his voice low and controlled. The resemblance was an intriguing coincidence. "Do you believe in coincidences?" Roderick smiled slightly, remembering having asked her the same question days ago. "No," he replied simply. "And you?" Brooke held his gaze, feeling a strange mixture of fear and fascination, less and less. The silence between them vibrated with unresolved tension. Roderick slowly raised his hand, almost touching Brooke's face, but stopping millimeters from her skin. "You shouldn't be here," he murmured, more to himself than to her. "Why not?" "Because I can't trust myself when I'm near you." The raw honesty of the confession caught her off guard. Roderick abruptly stepped back, creating distance between them. "There are cleaning products in the bathroom," he said, his voice returning to a professional tone. "I'd like you to organize the personal items, clean the surfaces, change the bed linen. Don't touch the wall with the notes. That stays as it is." "Yes, sir," Brooke replied automatically, relieved by the break in tension. "I'll be in the office if you need anything." Roderick walked to the door, but stopped before leaving. "Brooke?" "Yes?" "Thank you." He hesitated as if wanting to say more, but only nodded briefly and left, closing the door behind him. Alone in Rebecca's room, Brooke took a deep breath, trying to calm her racing heart. The charged atmosphere of the room seemed to suffocate her, a mix of the sweet perfume that still lingered in the air, the weight of the conspiracy theories on the walls, and the unsettling feeling that this room held much darker secrets than Roderick admitted. Deciding to focus on work, Brooke began to organize the dressing table. As she tidied the objects, she noticed something strange: several packages of the same products, 3 identical bottles of the same perfume, all partially used, 3 hairbrushes seemingly identical, 3 cosmetic bags with makeup products, each containing the same items. Intrigued, she opened the drawers of the dresser. The first contained delicate lingerie carefully folded. The second, blouses and t-shirts organized by color. In the third, she found photo albums. She took one out and began to flip through it. They were photos of Rebecca at different ages: baby, child, teenager, adult. Many included Roderick, always close, always protective. The parents appeared in some of the older images, an elegant and distant couple. Some photos showed the family mansion, social gatherings, trips around the world. In several images, Brooke noticed that Rebecca wore the same black dress she was now wearing. On the last page of the album, a single loose photograph slipped onto her lap. It was different from the others, a black and white image, slightly out of focus as if taken in a hurry. It showed a young woman very similar to Rebecca, but with shorter hair, holding a newborn baby. Behind her, partially visible, was a man Brooke recognized as Roderick's father. Turning the photo over, she found a pencil inscription in nervous handwriting. "I was right. A and the baby. Albright Clinic, 1998. A noise at the door made Brooke jump. Quickly, she slipped the photo into her dress pocket and replaced the album in the drawer. When she turned, she saw Roderick standing in the doorway, watching her intently. "Found anything interesting?" he asked, his casual tone contradicting the tension in his posture. "Just organizing things." "As you ask, sir," Brooke replied, trying to sound natural. Roderick entered the room, approaching the dresser. Rebecca was meticulous with her belongings, he commented, running his fingers over the polished surface. She had 3 of everything, always, a kind of safety ritual she developed in adolescence. Therapists called it compulsive behavior. "She seemed to be a complex person," Brooke observed, careful with her words. "Complex is an understatement," Roderick smiled sadly. "Brilliant, obsessive, intense, paranoid, all at once." He looked directly into Brooke's eyes. "Sometimes I think she was the only one who truly knew me. And now I'm alone." The simplicity of the answer contained such deep pain that Brooke felt a knot in her throat. Without thinking, she reached out and touched Roderick's arm, an instinctive gesture of comfort. He looked at her hand as if it was something extraordinary, and then slowly placed his hand over hers. The touch was warm, electric, sending waves of heat up Brooke's arm. "You shouldn't touch me," Roderick murmured, but he didn't pull his hand away. "Why?" "Because I'm trying to be a better man than I am." Their eyes met, and Brooke felt herself falling into a deep green abyss. There was desire in his eyes, no doubt, but also pain, guilt, and a desperation that frightened her, as if he were drowning and she was both the savior and the ocean itself. Brooke was the first to break contact, gently withdrawing her hand. "I should finish cleaning," she said, stepping back a few paces. Roderick nodded, visibly composing himself. "Yes, of course." He walked to the door again. "When you're finished, come to the office. I have something important to discuss with you." Alone again, Brooke took the photograph from her pocket, studying it carefully. Who was A, And why did Rebecca think this photograph proved her conspiracy theories about an unknown sister? As she continued to organize the room, Brooke couldn't shake the growing feeling that she had fallen into a complex web of family secrets, dangerous obsessions, and forbidden desires. And most disturbing, a part of her yearned to delve deeper, to discover all the dark secrets of the Albrights, even if it meant risking the same uncertain fate as Rebecca. Who was she really? And why did she feel so inexplicably connected to this place, to this story? To this man? Unanswered questions echoed in her mind as she put the photograph back in her pocket, determined to discover more about Rebecca, about Roderick, and perhaps about herself. Having finished organizing Rebecca's room, Brooke headed to Roderick's office with hesitant steps. The mysterious photograph weighed in her pocket like a stolen secret. Part of her wanted to confront him directly, to ask about A and the baby, about Rebecca's theories. But her self-preservation instinct advised caution. The office was partially lit, casting long shadows on the book-filled shelves. Roderick stood by the window, contemplating the sleeping city, a glass of whiskey in his hand. Hearing Brooke's footsteps, he turned slowly. "I finished organizing the room, Mr. Albright," she informed him, staying close to the door. "Roderick," he said softly. "Please call me Roderick when we're alone." The intimacy suggested by the request made Brooke hesitate. "You mentioned you had something important to discuss with me." Roderick nodded, placing his glass on the desk and indicating an armchair. "Please sit down." Brooke obeyed. Sitting rigidly on the edge of the leather armchair, Roderick remained standing, as if he needed the movement to organize his thoughts. "I want to offer you a proposition," he began, choosing his words carefully. "A more permanent arrangement." "I don't understand." "I want you to leave the cleaning company and work exclusively for me. As a personal assistant," Roderick explained. 5 times your current salary, premium health insurance, a car at your disposal, and an apartment." Brooke blinked, stunned. "An apartment? Tarson, on the 58th floor. It's been vacant for months." Roderick made a dismissive gesture, as if offering luxury real estate was trivial. "You'd be more accessible when I needed you." The proposal was as unexpected as it was disturbing. In normal circumstances, it would be an extraordinary opportunity. The chance to escape poverty, to have financial security, comfort. But Brooke couldn't ignore the flashing alerts in her mind. "Why me?" she asked directly. "There are thousands of qualified people to be your assistant. I don't even have proper training." Roderick took a few steps around the office, the tension evident in his restrained movements. "You are discreet, efficient, and—" He paused, searching for the right words. "Let's say your presence has a calming effect on me. Because I look like your sister." It wasn't a question. A flicker of irritation crossed Roderick's face. "Yes, there's a resemblance I can't deny. But it's not just that." He approached, stopping before her. "There's something about you, Brooke. Something familiar that goes beyond appearance, as if I've known you in another life." The intensity of his gaze was almost palpable. Brooke felt exposed, vulnerable, as if he could see through her defenses carefully built over years of survival. "So that's it? You want to turn me into a substitute for Rebecca?" Roderick recoiled as if slapped. Note the word came out harshly. "Rebecca was as irreplaceable. Then why the gifts? Her perfume, her dress, now an apartment near yours." "It's not what you're thinking." "And what am I thinking, Roderick?" Brooke challenged, rising from the armchair. They were face to face now, so close she could feel his breath, see the tiny golden flecks in his green eyes. Notice the tension in his perfectly sculpted jaw. "You think I'm some kind of predator, manipulating a vulnerable young woman to satisfy a sick fantasy about my sister." He pronounced each word with surgical precision. "Am I right?" Brooke didn't back down. "If the shoe fits—" A bitter smile curved Roderick's lips. "You have fire, Brooke Sumner. Rebecca did too. Stop comparing me to her." "Impossible." The word came out like a painful confession. "You are reflections of each other. I can't look at you without seeing her." The declaration hung between them like a sentence. Brooke felt a shiver of fear and something more, a disturbing mixture of repulsion and fascination. "I am not her," she said firmly. "I am not a ghost, nor a substitute, nor a second chance. No, that's not what I want from you." Roderick ran a hand through his hair in a gesture of frustration. It's more complicated. Then explain. Roderick moved away, creating distance between them. He walked to one of the bookshelves and pressed something Brooke couldn't see. With a soft click, a section of the shelf slid sideways, revealing a built-in safe. He typed a combination, opened the steel door, and pulled out a red folder. Before I show you this, I need your word that you will maintain absolute secrecy, regardless of what you decide about my proposition. Brooke hesitated. She was entering unknown, potentially dangerous territory, but curiosity, that compulsion that had always been both her blessing and her curse, propelled her forward. You have my word. Roderick handed her the folder. On the cover, a single title, Project Mirror 1997-1999 Albright Clinic. With slightly trembling fingers, Brooke opened the folder. The first pages contained scientific and medical terms she barely understood. In vitro fertilization protocols, studies on embryo division, genetic modifications, something called induced monozygotic development. But then came the photographs. Laboratory images showing embryos at different stages of development. And then, a series of photographs of 3 newborn babies, lying side by side, almost identical. On the last page, an official document with the Albright Clinic letterhead, signed by Dr. Richard Albright, Roderick's father. It was an experimental birth certificate, dated June 12, 1998. On it, 3 names, Roderick Albright, Rebecca Albright, and the third name had been carefully erased, rendering it illegible. Brooke looked up from the folder, meeting Roderick's intense gaze. Rebecca was right, she murmured, the reality hitting her like a cold wave. There really were 3 of you. Roderick nodded gravely. Identical triplets. The first successful case of artificial embryo division, resulting in viable multiple births. My father's great experiment. But what happened to the 3rd baby? The 3rd sister? I don't know for sure. Roderick sat heavily in his chair. Our parents never told us about her. We grew up believing it was just Rebecca and me. Perfectly normal twins. Then how did you find out? Rebecca found out first, he explained, his voice low and controlled. She was always curious, stubborn. She started investigating when we were about 20. She found old documents, talked to former clinic employees. She put the puzzle together little by little. And you didn't believe her, Brooke concluded. Remembering the conspiracy theories in the room, a look of guilt crossed Roderick's face. I thought it was part of her delusions, her psychological condition. He picked up the whiskey glass again, taking a large gulp. Rebecca worsened rapidly after that. She became obsessed with the idea of finding our lost sister. She spent sleepless nights, searching adoption records, medical databases, any clue that could lead to her. That's when she started covering the walls with her theories, Brooke was beginning to understand. Exactly, Roderick confirmed. She believed our parents had given the 3rd baby up for adoption as part of the experiment, to study the development of the 3 in different environments. Nature versus nurture, the ultimate scientific experiment. And when your parents had the accident, Rebecca became convinced it wasn't an accident. Roderick stared at the amber liquid in his glass. That they had been eliminated because they were about to reveal the truth, to bring our sister back. The weight of the revelations was overwhelming. Brooke tried to process everything, to fit the pieces of this dark puzzle. But what does this have to do with me? She asked finally. Why are you showing me this? Roderick stood up again, approaching her with measured steps. Because I believe you are her, Brooke, he said, his voice almost a whisper. Our lost sister. The 3rd mirror. The shock of the declaration left Brooke momentarily speechless. It was absurd, impossible, delusional. And yet, a part of her resonated with those words, as if a long-buried truth was finally emerging into the light. This is crazy, she managed to say finally. I am an orphan, yes, but I was born in Liverpool. I have documents, records. Documents can be forged, Roderick argued, especially when one has enough money and power. Are you telling me your father faked my birth certificate, gave me up for adoption in another county, and then erased all traces? Just for an experiment? My father was a brilliant man, but utterly immoral when it came to science. Roderick seemed strangely calm now. To him we were less children and more achievements, living proofs of his genius. Brooke shook her head, refusing to accept that fantastic narrative. This is absurd. You're confusing me with someone else. I need to be identical to you and Rebecca to be this supposed sister, and we are clearly not identical. Roderick smiled slightly. Identical twins aren't always carbon copies of each other, Brooke. Small differences in development, exposure to distinct environments, epigenetic factors, all of these can create subtle variations in appearance. He approached closer. Besides, you are exactly our age. You were born, according to your documents, only a week after us. And there's the resemblance everyone notices. Cecilia, Arthur, myself. Coincidences. So many coincidences together cease to be coincidences. Roderick picked something up from his desk. But if you need more concrete proof, he extended his hand, offering her a small metallic object. It was a home DNA test kit, still sealed. We can know with absolute certainty, he said softly. A sample from you, one from me. Results in 48 hours. Brooke looked at the kit as if it were a snake about to strike. The proposition was both terrifying and irresistibly tempting. All her life she had wondered about her origins, about who she really was. And now the answer was literally within her reach. And if... She hesitated, her voice trembling. What if it's true? Roderick's eyes shone with a complex emotion. Hope, longing, and something darker, more possessive. Then you will finally know who you are. You will have a name, a history, a family. He paused significantly. You will have me. The implication of those words was disturbing. Brooke instinctively recoiled. And what if I don't want to take the test? If I prefer to leave now and never look back? Roderick's expression subtly hardened. Then you will continue living in doubt, with that emptiness inside you. His words were soft, but laden with a veiled cruelty. And I will find another way to confirm my theory. The implicit threat did not go unnoticed. Are you threatening me? I am offering the truth, he corrected. All I ask in return is that, if the test confirms my theory, you accept my proposal. Come work for me. Stay close. His green eyes shone intensely. Allow me to know you, Brooke. Allow me to reclaim what was stolen from me. A heavy silence fell between them. Brooke could feel her heart beating violently against her ribs, her mind racing, trying to process all the implications. If Roderick was right, her entire identity, everything she believed about herself, would be a construction, an elaborate lie. I need time to think, she said finally. Roderick studied her face for a long moment, then nodded slowly. Time is something I have plenty of. He returned to his desk, picked up a card, and wrote something on the back. My personal number. When you're ready, call me. Day or night? Brooke accepted the card with trembling fingers. May I go now? The car is waiting downstairs. Roderick walked to the door, opening it for her. Think carefully, Brooke. Some truths once discovered cannot be unlearned. She left without looking back, feeling the weight of his gaze following her down the corridor. In the elevator, her legs finally gave way and she slid to the floor, breathing rapidly, her mind spinning with the night's revelations. If what Roderick had said was true, if she really was the lost Albright triplet, then everything in her life, the orphanhood, the poverty, the constant struggle, would have been unnecessary, the result of a cruel experiment conducted by an obsessed scientist. But there was another possibility, equally disturbing. What if Roderick was just manipulating her, recreating with her the same unhealthy dynamic he had with Rebecca? Perhaps he truly believed in his theory, driven by grief and guilt. Or perhaps it was all an elaborate web to draw her close, to replace his lost sister. The car silently took her back to the outskirts. Throughout the journey, Brooke contemplated the sleeping city, feeling like a stranger in her own life. When she arrived at her small rented room, the simplicity and poverty of the place seemed even more accentuated after the opulence of Roderick's penthouse. Exhausted, Brooke stripped off the elegant black dress and let it fall to the floor. She took out the mysterious photograph found in Rebecca's room and placed it under her pillow. Then she stared at her reflection in the small cracked mirror on the wall. Who was the woman looking back at her? Brooke Sumner, the orphan without a history? Or the third Albright heir, the lost triplet, raised away from her siblings as part of a cruel experiment? Approaching the mirror, Brooke studied her own features with new eyes. The shape of her eyes, the curve of her nose, the line of her jaw. She could now see what she hadn't noticed before. Subtle resemblances to Roderick and presumably to Rebecca. Or was it just her imagination, influenced by Roderick's seductive narrative? A sudden impulse overcame her. Picking up a pair of scissors, Brooke began to cut her long black hair, strands falling to the floor like discarded dreams. She cut and cut, until the final result resembled the hairstyle she had seen in Rebecca's photographs. Short, chin length, framing her face in a completely different way. When she finished, the transformation was shocking. In the mirror, a different woman stared back, more sophisticated, more intense, strangely familiar and yet unknown. "Who are you?" she whispered to her reflection. That night her dreams were populated by fragmented images, 3 identical babies in side-by-side cribs, white hospital corridors, a man in a lab coat with Roderick's father's face, flames consuming documents, and always mirrors, infinite mirrors reflecting 3 identical faces that gradually transformed into one. She woke with a start to the insistent sound of the doorbell. Confused and still half asleep, Brooke opened the door to find Mrs. Hilda with a worried expression. "Girl, there's a man wanting to speak with you. He said it's urgent." Brooke felt a shiver of apprehension. "Roderick, I don't know his name." "He's a tall, indigenous man in a security uniform. Arthur." The silent security guard who had given her the warning drawing. What could he want? "Tell him I'll be right down." Quickly, Brooke dressed and descended the narrow stairs of the tenement. In the small inner courtyard, Arthur waited, rigid and solemn in his impeccable uniform. Upon seeing her, his eyes widened slightly, probably due to her new haircut that made her look so much like Rebecca. "Arthur, isn't it?" Brooke greeted, trying to hide her nervousness. "How did you find me?" The man took a notepad from his pocket and quickly wrote, "I followed the car last night. We need to talk." "Not here." Brooke hesitated. Could she trust him? The warning drawing suggested he was trying to protect her, but from what exactly? From Roderick. As if reading her thoughts, Arthur wrote again, "It's about Rebecca. I know what really happened to her." Those words dispelled any hesitation. Brooke nodded firmly. "Let's go." They walked in silence to a small cafe a few blocks away. The place was almost empty at that Sunday morning hour. They chose a table at the back, away from curious ears. Arthur ordered 2 coffees with quick gestures and then began to write in his notepad. His handwriting was surprisingly elegant for such large hands. "I worked as personal security for the Albright family for 15 years. I was there when Rebecca disappeared. It wasn't as Roderick tells it." Brooke felt her mouth dry. What really happened? Arthur looked around, making sure no one was watching them, and then continued writing. "Rebecca discovered something. Something about the experiment, about the 3rd sister." She confronted Roderick. The argument was violent. "You witnessed this?" Arthur nodded gravely, returning to write. "I was on duty that night. I heard everything through the security intercom. Rebecca was screaming that she was going to find her sister, bring the truth to light. Roderick tried to stop her." Brooke felt a shiver run down her spine. "Are you saying Roderick—" She couldn't complete the sentence. Arthur's dark eyes were filled with an old pain. He wrote slowly, as if each word weighed heavily. "I don't know exactly what happened next. I heard a thud. When I went upstairs, Roderick said Rebecca had left furious, that she needed space. I never saw her again." The coffee grew cold, untouched, as Brooke absorbed that disturbing information. "Why are you telling me this now?" Arthur stared at her intently, then wrote 2 lines that made her heart freeze. "Because you are just like her. And you are walking the same path. If you're not careful, your fate will be the same." Arthur's words echoed in Brooke's mind like a dark warning as she walked through the busy streets of central London. After leaving the cafe, she had spent hours wandering aimlessly, trying to organize her thoughts. The possibility of Roderick having some responsibility for Rebecca's disappearance was terrifying, even more so considering the growing attraction she felt for him. On an impulse, Brooke entered an internet cafe and sat down in front of one of the computers. She typed into Google, "Albright Clinic plus genetic experiment." The results were few and vague, some scientific articles mentioning advances in vitro fertilization in the 90s, reports on the sudden closure of the clinic after a fire in 2010, and 1 or 2 mentions of Dr. Richard Albright as a pioneer in controversial research. Changing tactics. Brooke searched. Rebecca Albright plus disappearance. This time she found more information. Reports from 5 years ago detailed the mysterious disappearance of the Albright heiress. A photograph showed Roderick, younger and visibly distressed, at a press conference offering a reward for information. Another article, dated 2 years after the disappearance, mentioned that the case had been officially closed, with Rebecca presumed dead despite the absence of a body. One report in particular caught her attention. It was an interview with a former employee of the Albright mansion, identified only as MS, who suggested that Rebecca suffered from mental instability and had had several previous episodes of disappearance, always returning after a few days. The woman also insinuated that the relationship between the twins was intense and complex. Mr. Roderick practically lived for his sister, the interviewee said. It was as if one couldn't exist without the other. When she started dating other people, having an independent life, he didn't take it well. There were terrible fights. Brooke felt a chill. The words seemed to confirm Arthur's story. But there was something more in that dynamic that disturbed her, something that suggested the bond between the twins went beyond the bounds of a normal fraternal relationship. Continuing her research, Brooke typed triplets plus experiment plus separation at birth. The results led her to scientific articles on studies of twins and triplets separated in childhood. One of them, written by a certain Dr. Paul Morrison, specifically mentioned Dr. Albright's pioneering studies on cognitive and emotional development in monozygotic multiples raised in distinct environments. Printing the most relevant articles, Brooke left the internet cafe with her mind buzzing with questions and theories. If she really was the lost Albright triplet, raised separately as part of a cruel experiment, then her entire life had been a lie. The foster homes, the abuse, the poverty, the constant struggle for survival, all part of a calculated plan to observe how she would develop in contrast to her siblings raised in luxury. But there was another possibility. What if Roderick was just projecting his sick fantasies about his sister onto her? What if this whole triplet story was just a shared delusion between him and Rebecca? Brooke needed concrete answers, and she knew exactly where to look. St. Cecilia's home, where she had spent part of her childhood before being sent to a foster family, was on the outskirts of London. It was an austere place run by nuns that housed orphans and abandoned children. Brooke didn't have good memories of the place, the strict discipline, the meager meals, the lack of affection. But it was there that the records of her arrival in the social care system were kept. When she got off the bus in front of the orphanage's iron gate, she felt her stomach clench with unpleasant memories. The two-story building, painted a faded yellow, seemed smaller than in her recollections. The inner courtyard, where dozens of children used to play under strict supervision, was strangely silent for a Sunday afternoon. At the reception, an elderly nun looked up from a prayer book. "Can I help you?" "Sister, my name is Brooke Sumner. I was cared for here between 2001 and 2004. I'm looking for information about my origin." The nun adjusted her glasses, studying her with curiosity. "Brooke Sumner," she repeated slowly. "Yes, I remember you. The quiet girl who arrived at 5 years old." She made the sign of the cross. "Sister Margaret handles these matters. Come, I'll take you to her." Brooke followed the nun down the familiar corridors, where the smell of wax and disinfectant hadn't changed in all those years. They passed the refectory, now empty, where she remembered eating in absolute silence, and the communal dormitory, where she had cried silently so many nights. Sister Margaret was in her office, a small organized room with metal filing cabinets on the walls. She was a middle-aged woman with a severe expression, whom Brooke vaguely recognized. "Sister Margaret, this is Brooke Sumner. She wants information about her arrival." The older nun nodded and indicated a chair. "Sit down." "What exactly do you want to know?" "Everything," Brooke replied simply. "How I got here, who brought me, if there was any information about my biological parents." Sister Margaret frowned, thoughtful. "That was a long time ago. I'll check the archives." She stood up and walked to one of the metal cabinets. "Sumner Brooke. It should be around here." After a few minutes of searching, the nun returned with a thin, yellowed folder. "Here it is. Not much, I'm afraid." She opened the folder and examined the documents. "You were brought by a social worker in October 2001. Your record says you were found abandoned at the door of a church in Liverpool, approximately 3 years old. You didn't speak much, only said your name was Brooke." Was there any identification? Any documents? Only a birth certificate. Sister Margaret turned a page. Here's the copy. Name, Brooke Sumner. Estimated date of birth, June 19th, 1998. Parents unknown. The date made Brooke's heart race. Only a week after the birth of the Albright twins, or triplets if Roderick's theory was correct. It was too significant a coincidence. May I see that certificate? The nun pushed the document towards her. It was a simple copy with the fields filled in by hand. Brooke studied it carefully, looking for any sign of falsification. Nothing obvious stood out, but if Richard Albright had indeed orchestrated her separation from her siblings, he certainly would have had the resources to forge convincing documents. Is there anything else about my arrival? Any witnesses? The social worker's name. Sister Margaret consulted the folder again. The social worker was named Anna Claire Oliver, from the Liverpool City Council's Social Services Department. She frowned. There's a note here I didn't remember. You arrived with a small locket. It's noted that it was kept in the institution's safe to be returned when you reached adulthood. Locket? Brooke leaned forward, sudden hope igniting in her chest. I never received any locket. The nun seemed genuinely confused. Strange. It should have been given to you along with your documents when you left here. She stood up. Let's check the safe. Following Sister Margaret to a room at the back of the building, Brooke could barely contain her agitation. A locket could be concrete proof of her origin, the key to unraveling the entire mystery. The safe was an old built-in strongbox protected by a heavy metal door. The nun typed a combination, turned a key and opened the door with a creak. Inside there were several boxes labeled with names. The belongings of children who haven't been picked up yet are kept here, the nun explained, searching among the boxes. Sumner, here, Brooke Sumner. She took out a small metal box and opened it. Inside there was a sealed brown envelope with the St. Cecilia's home stamp. The nun broke the seal and poured the contents onto the table. A delicate silver locket fell with a metallic clink. It was an oval cameo with elaborate carvings on the edges. Brooke picked it up with trembling fingers and pressed the small side clasp. The locket opened, revealing inside a tiny black and white photograph of a newborn baby and, on the other side, an engraved inscription, R.A. 1206, 1998. R.A. Rebecca Albright? Roderick Albright, or her true name, the one that had been erased from the document Roderick had shown her. Can I keep this? Brooke asked, her voice choked with emotion. Of course, it's rightfully yours, replied the nun, observing her with curiosity. Are you all right, my child? You look like you've seen a ghost. A ghost. Perhaps that was exactly what she was seeing. The ghost of a lost identity. Of a life she could have had. Of a past deliberately hidden. I'm fine, Brooke lied, closing the locket and putting it in her pocket. Thank you for your help, sister. Leaving the orphanage, Brooke felt simultaneously closer and more distant from the truth. The locket was concrete proof of her connection to the Albright family. The initials, the birth date, everything coincided. But so many unanswered questions remained. Why had she been separated from her siblings? What had really happened to Rebecca? And most importantly, what role had Roderick played in all of this? As she walked to the bus stop, Brooke was overcome by a sudden feeling of being watched. Looking around, she saw nothing suspicious, just a black car parked a few meters away. The same model that had taken her to Roderick's penthouse. Coincidence or surveillance? Her phone vibrated in her pocket. A message from an unknown number. Did you find what you were looking for? Brooke's heart froze. How did Roderick know where she was? Had he been tracking her movements all along? As she stared at the phone screen, another message arrived. It's time for us to take the test, don't you think? I have everything prepared. The car is waiting. Was it a trap or an opportunity? Brooke looked at the black car and saw the uniformed driver at the wheel, waiting patiently. Part of her wanted to flee, to disappear, to forget everything about the Albrights and their dark secrets. But another part, the part that had always yearned for answers, for connection, for identity, compelled her to move forward. With the locket weighing in her pocket like a talisman, Brooke made her decision. She quickly typed, "I'm coming," and walked towards the black car, aware that each step was taking her deeper into the labyrinth of the Albright family's secrets, and perhaps of her own forgotten past.